In today's episode, guys, Lou and I are going to be going through our top 10 albums of 2023. Lou and I compiled a list of the 10 very best albums, at least in our opinion. So let me know in the comment section where you agree with us, where you disagree with us, and what are your top 10 albums of the year. But just a little side note, guys, since it's the end of the year, I think it's fitting to announce our award show. It's officially going to be going down on December 28th. That is a Thursday night. It is going to be absolutely massive. We're going to be doing vinyl giveaways, and we're going to be going through all of our team selections for different categories such as best song, best album, etc. So if you guys want to check that out, subscribe to the channel because it's going to be one of the biggest events of the year. Plus, we have a lot of new content coming for January. We're starting off the year with our most anticipated albums of the year. It's going to be a stacked year next year, so you're going to want to be updated with all of that. But Lou, top 10 albums of the year.
Yes, sir.
How did you feel about your list?
I mean, listen, this wasn't the strongest year for hip-hop. There's no mystery in that, but I have quite a few honorable mentions, to be honest with you. So let me take you through some of those. I have Glorious Game by Black Thought and El Michel's Affair.
You know what? I thought that was going to make your list this year.
It didn't crack it.
It didn't crack mine either. That's going to be an honorable mention, one of the best written albums of the year. But okay, keep going. What else do you got?
I have The Great Escape by Larry June and The Alchemist,
You know,
and not crack my
it.
list.
I felt it, man. I felt it coming.
I have King the Divine and Javi Darko's Fear and Loathing in Long Island. I have To What End by Odyssey. Glaucoma 2 by Key Glock. Really fun trap album. Director's Cut 4 by Ransom. Ways of Knowing by Navy Blue. Porches by Reason was also an honorable mention. Black Man Wonderland by Young Senju. Samson by Chica, and then Round Trip by Static Selecta.
I have Round Trip by Static Selecta as well. Incredible features all the way throughout. Glaucoma 2 is one of the best trap albums of the year. Just barely made my list as well. Ways of Knowing by Navy Blue. That was an album that I had in my top 10 albums of the year so far when we dropped that around the mid-year, but barely just made it. But Lou, let's get into this. At number 10, what do you have?
Number 10, I have Michael by Killer Mike. At number 10.
Wow, I thought you were going to put it higher. At number 10, I have Maps by Billy Woods and Kenny Siegel.
Nice.
So,
I expected you to bring that one in.
Yes. So I was a big advocator for Maps throughout the
Yeah.
entire year. If you guys have been watching, let's say, our live streams and even listening to the audio series that we have on Spotify, I've recommended quite a few songs off of this album, but I think it's one of the strongest concept albums of the year. And whenever Kenny Siegel and Billy Woods come together, it's always a fantastic experience. And maybe you guys are familiar with Hiding Places, which dropped a couple of years ago, but the difference with this one is that I feel like it's a lot more breezy in tone. I feel like it's maybe a lot more accessible for people that are just starting to get into Billy Woods, and Billy Woods is one of the best writers in the entire game. So you're going to find just concepts of them two traveling on the road and going to places maybe that they want to go to and places that they've already been, and basically the concept is them finding their way back home and to their roots. So I really love the concept. I think it has a memorable track list all the way throughout. It's not one of the most accessible albums of the year, but when it comes from a writing standpoint and also the chemistry between an artist and producer, it was really one of those albums for me this year.
Absolutely. I'm going to have that a bit higher in my list, surprisingly, because at one point I was even debating even throwing it in or not. But yeah, Michael by Killer Mike, an album that's been getting a lot of praise. It got the Grammy nominations, and I'm very happy because Killer Mike albums tend to get overlooked. We saw it happen with rap music back in 2012, where it was one of the best albums of that year. No one really showed it that much love, but this is an incredible album. It's pretty much like this autobiographical album of Killer Mike's life, his journey, going through different stages of his life, going through grief stages of losing his mother and his grandmother on a song like Motherless.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're a fan of like old Atlanta Dungeon Family type of music, if you love the soul and funk vibes, you're definitely going to enjoy this. And you also have performances from Dungeon family members such as CeeLo Green, Andre 3000, Future, and more. Apart from that, there's so many highlight moments on here, like Down by Law, which is the opener where you have Killer Mike rapping his ass off over this trap beat and him showing you that even if you're rapping over a trap beat, you could still spit some bars. Apart from that, of course, you have the incredible Scientists and Engineers, which is easily one of the best songs of the entire year. And I just love the feeling that this album gives you.
It's very triumphant.
It's grandiose. You have these loud, powerful vocal gospel choirs that are mixed in there as well. And it feels like you're taking a trip to a church in the South where Killer Mike is the preacher and he's sort of giving you these messages, but not in a preachy way. You know what I mean?
From his own personal experiences.
For sure.
I find that's what's really cool about it. So I'm going to be talking about that album a bit later into the video, but let's keep going on with this, all right? At number 9, I have Generational Curse by Ice Cold Bishop. It made my list.
Yeah.
It made my list at number 9.
I have it way higher than that. I have Voir by Earl Sweatshirt and The Alchemist cracking in at number 9. So yeah, tell me about Generational Curse. It's an album that I've been advocating for this entire year. So what stands out about it to you?
Well, listen, I think when you have to look at Ice Cold Bishop, it was very interesting because I was put onto his music by Hot Water Tank off of Tecmo Bow. His feature was absolutely incredible. And the way that I could kind of explain Ice Cold Bishop's music is that it's unorthodox, but then again, it is accessible in certain areas. And I feel like it's an album that challenged me as a listener to have to go back and not only, get past maybe a lot of the brash instrumentals and a lot of the hard knocking 808s, and then even like his unique flow and cadence. It kind of reminds me of like a West Coast Danny Brown to a certain extent, but it's interesting because there's so much layers to this album when you start even getting into the skits of the album and a lot of different songs on here, like Dare, for example, Last Night, Bad Influences from My Uncle, and basically, you're getting what the album title is telling you, Generational Curse, where Ice Cold Bishop is talking about, what it was like growing up in a certain environment and all the little types of like side stories that he had to go through, and it's kind of like, I'm not comparing it to GKMC, but it's very GKMC inspired to a certain extent.
Sure.
And that's what I like about it, is that these types of albums coming from the underground in 2023 provides me a lot of value. I really saw the light because of you, and like really you advocating for this album. So when I went back, especially in the past couple of months, it really did have a strong grip on my rotation. So I had to bring it in, and I think that it's one of the most captivating performances from a rapper all year. When you look at Ice Cold Bishop and what he brings to the table as a rapper throughout the entire track list, he has the unique voice and delivery on par. He has the incredible depictive writing. He's able to get into certain rhyme schemes that not a lot of rappers are able to get into, especially in 2023. So I think when you look at it as a concept album, when you look at it from Ice Cold Bishop's perspective, and when you have to look at it even from the sequencing of the album, it's beautifully sequenced, and it's also an album that has no filler throughout it. Only 13 songs, and it's a super breezy listen. It cracked my list. And honestly, like, I was debating Generational Curse versus like maybe a Ways of Knowing, but
okay.
I think that when you have to look at this album like pound for pound, the production is so captivating, and he brings so much of a mic presence to this album that it's hard to ignore this. It's really a hard album to ignore.
I think as a performance, it's not really comparable to anyone else's
it really is
artist performance.
I'm being honest with you, but talk to me about Voir, because I'm gonna have this very soon.
Absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, when it comes to Earl and Alchemist, Earl was on that list of rappers that I had of people that needed to work with the Alchemist for a full album. And now it wasn't no YouTube mystery album. We finally got the real thing with this one.
The tangible thing, yes.
And yeah, it's the real deal. 11 songs, 26 minutes. And Earl Sweatshirt, I feel like, is a very particular rapper in terms of his rapping style, and Alchemist understands that, and he really was able to cater to Earl's style because he's giving you productions that you really haven't heard Earl on before, in the sense of getting a gospel-inspired beat, getting groovy bass lines, getting these prominent vocal samples, and I feel like a lot of these more uplifting beats sort of do a good job of combating Earl's more depressive cadences and tones,
very
which
monotone.
he's used for.
So let me ask you this.
It's a good clash,
yes,
you know what I mean?
will ask you this, all right? Because I'm going to be talking about Voir very soon. But when you look at this track list, what's your favorite production on it?
Favorite production? It has to be Mankala. It has to be.
That's there for sure.
Yeah, those gospel organs and choirs just ringing off. Unlike anything I ever heard Earl rap on before, but I just love the streams of consciousness. I love also a lot of the song structures on here, bro, are super unique because oftentimes you literally just get like one verse from Earl, and there's no other dependency besides how many thoughts he has to spill. It's all organic and based on this is my stream of conscious for this topic. This is what I'm giving you.
And you also get a lot of songs with one verses in it. So I'm going to be talking about that. And that's what I really enjoyed about the album.
A lot of standout songs on here, like 27 Braids, where he's rapping about like growing pains and embracing the idea of letting things go so that he can move forward, using that with the metaphor of his braids. Genius concept. And that's what you're getting all across this album is the prolific writing you're used to getting from Earl Sweatshirt, some mind-bending metaphors, one of the most refreshing Alchemist soundscapes that I've heard in a very long time, and these beats fit Earl Sweatshirt like a glove over his hand. Like it's match made in heaven.
It is magic, absolutely.
It really is, so.
But okay, let's go on to number 8. At number 8, I have Voir by Earl Sweatshirt and the Alchemist. What do you got?
I have a very underrated one. I have Bad News by Blue and Real Bad Man.
Oh, there we go. Yes, that was one that I kind of like looked over for this list.
Yeah.
Didn't end up making mine. So I guess I'll piggyback off of you with the Voir pick. This has to make a top 10 album of the year. I think it's criminal if it doesn't make it.
So this means that you have 2 Alchemist albums in your top 10
That is
list.
correct.
Yeah?
Yes. If I had to make a list of MVPs for this year, Uncle Al would be there. And I think you did the album justice with your explanation. It's a very compact album as well. And even when you start off the album with songs like 100 High Street or Vince Scully, those are one verse songs from Earl. Of course, you have a hook on Vince Scully, but for the most part, it's really compact writing from Earl. And that's what I like to see, is that he's not overcomplicating anything. It's very profound in messaging, but you guys are going to be able to enjoy this album with a lot of deep explanations and life metaphors and street talk and just whatever that Earl went through in his life mixed in with these incredible sample flips. And that's why I think that it's one of the best albums of the year when it comes to sample flips and when it comes down to like that nitty-gritty boom bap production that we all love as hip-hop fans. This is one of the best produced albums of the year in that category.
Yeah.
So I think it has that going for it. Not only that, but when you have to look at artist-producer duo albums, one of the best of the year in that category as well. Knocks off all the marks when it comes down to writing and concepts, even the features, like looking at, let's say, Mike's verse on Century, fantastic verse. Looking at Vince Staples on Mancala, that made my top 10 features of the year. By the way, you guys could check that out on Spotify. So I think there's so much value to get out of this track list that only has 11 songs, and like you said, it's only 26 minutes. So there's nothing that suffers also from an accessibility factor with this album. That's what I enjoy about it as well. It was a bit of a grower on me. I'm going to be honest with you. It does take maybe repeated listens. And when you start getting into like the Earl, the Larry Junes, the Boldies, and you see that those types of artists work so well with the Alchemist, it's because the Alchemist brings out that flavor, if that makes sense to you, out of the rapping skills of these types of rappers. And I really do think that when you have to look at the monotone rappers that stick to maybe one cadence, are very slow and meditative with their deliveries.
He brings a liveliness to them.
And that's what I enjoy about this track list. Another big standout for me, like you said, was 27 Braids. But even something like Dead Zone is a fantastic song that I've had on repeat all year. So that's my number 8. But talk to me about this new Blue album.
Yeah,
man.
so bad news. I mean, Blue has been my favorite underground rapper for the longest time at this point, and he decided to join forces with Real Bad Man, which is a producer collective that are known for their work with Boldy James, with Smoke DZA, and a bunch of other rappers. And what they typically do and what they continue to do on this album is give you boom bap style production with their own twist of like dusty samples and more abstract samples that are sort of woven into those beats. And when it comes to this album, it was very refreshing because this is not a high concept album. There's no overarching theme that connects everything. It's really just Blue. Instead of, being the nice guy and being like the everyday
lyrical
relatable guy,
exercise sort of stuff.
Instead of that, it's him showing that he is of the highest tier level MC, and that's what you're getting for the most part is amazing beats and amazing rhymes. And I feel like sometimes we don't have to overcomplicate music. Sometimes if you can master the area of amazing rhymes and beats, then that's the recipe that you need for a fantastic hip hop album. And I love his slant rhymes and internal rhymes in a song like The Golden Rule, where he raps, "Knowledge, wisdom, understand, just a cipher with mine. The Eiffel I climb will most likely stifle your mind, leave you unable to find me like you was blind. I'm designed to divine, to define." That's just an example of what you're getting on this album.
Top tier rhyme schemes.
It absolutely is. And I feel like this whole album, the rhymes could be sort of put together in a collection of a rhyme book where it's like these could all be used for rap battles, where these are all like, he's not attacking anyone in particular, but he's sort of like showing off to his adversaries and telling you why he's a better MC.
And he does it in more of like a generalized sort of way that doesn't necessarily pinpoint.
Absolutely. Great song concepts on here as well, like Hebrews, for example, where he reflects on his relationship with God, the concept of life and how insane it is. And that's what I find valuable, is just his perspective and his way to articulate his refreshing perspectives all throughout it. And another amazing song was The Hurt, where he's rapping about contemplations of quitting rap to go back to school to make ends meet. And yeah, just amazing productions, disc scratches, fire, vocal sample chops all throughout this project. And like I said, I feel like sometimes we don't have to overcomplicate listens. What you're getting here is amazing rhymes mixed in with amazing beats, and that's how I feel about it, bro.
There we go. So that's the number 8 selection. Let's go on to number 7. This is where I'm going to put 66689 Boulevard Prequel by Kip Stone.
There we go. I knew it was going to come into this list. I thought it was going to be a bit higher, though.
No, at number 7. What do you got at number 7?
I have Maps by Billy Woods and Kenny Siegel.
Okay, so talk to me about Maps.
Let me
so
take
what was
you
your
through
revelation?
Maps. So the revelation, I mean, listen, at this point, as we said, it's no surprise that Billy Woods is one of the best writers in hip-hop right now. And I think that he's better than 99% of rappers that are, putting pen to paper right now, just because he's so idiosyncratic with the way that he forms these lines where it's very esoteric. You have to sort of, if you know type of situation with a lot of the topics, a lot of the vocabulary that he's choosing. So because that's his style, it's a bit hard to get into these projects. And I feel like if you're not into Billy Woods yet, you sort of have to like reach certain checkpoints to get to the Billy Woods level. Like you have to like listen to Earl first, listen to MF Doom first, then maybe you go into Ka. Like you have to reach certain checkpoints like a video game to get to appreciate Billy Woods' music.
And it's very hard to appreciate his music sometimes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, my breakthrough with Billy Woods was with Hiding Places.
Me too.
And then that's what made me be like, oh, well, okay, let's go into this catalog.
We have Kenny Siegel behind this as well.
So that was a breath of fresh air for me. It was like, okay, let's see Kenny Siegel come back for this album. And they completely attacked it from a different place.
Absolutely. And I love the production because it'll always start off with like one instrument being the foundation. Like, for example, on the song Soft Landing, it's these acoustic strings. And then you get like these bombastic drums that sort of layer over. And that's sort of the formula for a lot of the beats. But soundscape wise, I found it was way more diverse compared to Hiding Places, just because you had a lot of like quirky jazz beats for the most part that were really nice. And yeah, the album kind of delves into Billy Woods' personal adaptation to the challenges and the changes that come with his increasing visibility and growth as an artist, and him sort of going on tour and having all these different wild experiences. And the pen game is unmatched. The one-liners are incredible. You
Even
also
some
have
good smoking songs on here, like Rapper Weed, for example. The way that he starts off this first verse is crazy. The strain's name was just a string of numbers, blockchain, throw it on the pile with the others, blue flame like the oven, weed, lube, weed, butter. Don't get him confused, whatever you do. I wasn't rude, but green eggs and ham, I had to refuse. Crazy.
Yeah,
crazy
and just
shit.
Also hilarious scenarios. Like there's one song called Soundcheck where he's like, yeah, fuck that. Like, don't expect to see me at Soundcheck. I'm not doing any prep before my show. Like, just have everything ready and I'm going to be there. Or him rapping about, like, having to take $300 Ubers. Like, really detailed outlines of what his life is like on the road. And as I said, he writes better than most people. And also, you get some good introspection. On the outro, for example, he's rapping about, like, seeing his kid on a swing set and just thinking about his own mortality and worrying about, like, his child. So, really fresh perspectives and pen game unparalleled to anybody else in the space right now. Not an easy album to get into, but one that's worth listening to. And yeah, it took me some time, but I got into it, bro. Let's go on to our number.
No, wait.
It's true. My bad.
I have to. Get
I'm used to you talking first for your picks. That's why.
So let me talk about 66689 Boulevard prequel. So this is an album by Kip Stone. I know that it's an album that I haven't talked about much on the YouTube, but that I've been giving a lot of praise in live streams, and that I've been giving as recommendations for our audio series. And the more and more I listen to this, the more and more I'm convinced that if this album would have came out maybe in like the TDE dominance years, it would have gotten a completely different light, and people would have been absolutely salivating at the fact that this album.
That's how I feel about Generational Curse too.
And that's the thing, is that like these albums are coming out, and I feel like they're not that like they're past their time. I don't want to say that, but it's like the hip hop fans will appreciate these albums. So this album is fantastic from start to finish. It's an album with 10 songs, no filler, all killer, and it's Kip Stone going through the trials and tribulations of life and really soul searching throughout the entire album, and taking like this kind of drive through maybe his own life and his own perspectives. And it's so interesting to see how Kip Stone also delivers a lot of these songs, because it's in these intricate rhyme schemes and these interesting vocabulary choices, but yet he makes them feel so relatable and also so fun to go through. So example, like you go through a song, for example, The Sun is Medicine, talking about like being on the dark side of the moon, for example, and getting that light in your life and what it could do for you. I just find all these song concepts super interesting, and it was an album that went under the radar for a lot of people, and that I'm glad I'm able to like at least give you guys a good recommendation for today, because it's been in my rotation the entire year. Lou, I've convinced you on this album so many different times in the studio, and it's just been so fun to go through. Even some of the production choices on this is incredible. Like example, on Pacifist Prayer, track number 5, you get this incredible beat transition like a minute 30 into the song, and it just sees Kip go into like another sort of vocabulary and another sort of like vocal cadence that he's able to attack. And that's what I like about Kip, is that he's able to sort of bring in so many different styles and flavors into his rap style. And again, kind of like an Ice Cold Bishop situation, to see that from a rapper in 2023 is always refreshing and something that I really enjoy. So I wanted to bring this album in as my number 7
Yeah,
placement.
great album without a doubt. Is he from the West Coast, by the way?
I believe
I think he is, right?
I think no. I think he's from Chicago.
Oh,
If I'm
okay.
not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, guys, don't confirm that with me.
Yeah.
But I believe he is from Chicago, but or Illinois, somewhere.
Yeah,
around there.
I don't know. I got some West Coast flavors from the
That's it,
album,
because you
so.
do get a lot of that like psychedelic haziness from the album production.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys are a fan of like that old Isaiah Rashad, then that old TDE sort of feeling, this album is for you. But let's go on to number 6. This is where I'm gonna have The Great Escape by Larry June. That's where it's gonna place. What do
I
you got?
have The Patience by Mick Jenkins, which I know you probably maybe have in your top 3 or maybe top 1. Maybe that's gonna be the surprise of the episode, is that Ant has the Mick Jenkins album as his favorite. But yeah, I mean, listen, when it comes to The Patience by Mick Jenkins, there's always a few guarantees with a Mick Jenkins album. You're gonna get these smooth, chill, jazzy soundscapes as you got on The Patience. But what I really appreciate the most about this album was this newfound hunger from Mick Jenkins. Like, he really had a lot to get off of his chest. And I was reading up that in interviews that he was only recently able to get out of his record situation, his record label situation. And he felt like he wasn't even making his best music for the past 5 years. And on this album, he finally had the freedom to sort of talk his shit and sort of start the trend towards a new path and a new creative stride for him going into this decade. And this album's phenomenal. And within the first song, Michelin Star, you get a good idea of what this album's like with a line like, "A speakers knock, but I didn't get in by my lonely," which is a double entendre, which this album is completely filled with. Apart from that, the whole Michelin Star concept is really cool because he's rapping about, like, of course, not being a chef, but sort of, having the Michelin star in the rap game and making music of the highest quality, but maybe not getting the recognition for it. Apart from that, the chemistry he has with all the feature artists are incredible. Looking at what he did with Freddie Gibbs on Show and Tell, I love how Freddie Gibbs sort of borrowed Mick Jenkins' flow and then switches into this double time flow and is able to like swiftly move back and forth between this faster and slower flow. Apart from that, you also have a really chill, wavy, and smooth song with Jid, looking at Smoke Break Dance. You have great concept songs like Roy Jabiv talking about the color theory.
It's really an advanced album.
It really is, bro. I love the whole concept of not having to rush the process and to find your footing gradually as you go through life's experiences, your career path, whatever the case may be. I love how concise the track list is too. And he rapped like the rent was due, in all honesty. Like, on every single track, you did not get a sleepy performance from him. And that's what I appreciated. Just one of the best artist performances of the entire year. Great production by Hollywood Cole and everybody else involved too.
Really
Phenomenal
top tier
listen.
album, absolutely. But let me go into The Great Escape by Larry June and The Alchemist. So this is going to be my second Alchemist album and the final one for today's list. And I do feel like this is one of the best luxury rap albums of the year, if I'm being completely honest with you. This is riding music, an album that you put on in your car and then you could just chill out to. It feels like you're driving through California with The Alchemist and Larry June in their drop top, and you're just playing this music and you're just enjoying life. This is really an album that, checks all the marks off when it comes to like sitting down and enjoying an album experience. You don't have to think too hard while you're listening to this album. It's such a breezy listen. It's beautiful. You're going to get so many incredible sample flips from The Alchemist throughout this album. And I think that alongside that, you also do get standouts of the year when you have to look at certain singles that made this. Example, Palisades, California made my top 10 songs of the year. Even looking at something for What Happened to the World with Wiz Khalifa. I love that feature. Wiz is rapping like, the old the old OJ days, when he's just getting super meditative. He's in his own thoughts. He's smoking.
He's been in that bag lately, even off of the Logic album too.
It's really nice to see, and I really enjoy that type of music because it's what I grew up listening to. Even looking at something, for example, like Margie's Candy House, for example, that's an incredible way to close off the album. And I love the synchronicity between Larry June and The Alchemist. It was a match made in heaven all the way throughout. This was an album that I had on my list as far as my top 10 albums of the year so far, when we were maybe around the June mark when we dropped this episode on audio podcast, but it's still here. It's here to stay, and I think it is one of the greatest moments of the entire album. Even something like Turkish Cotton, how lush that sample flip sounds, it's just incredible. And you're getting Larry June in a meditative bag throughout the entire album, but it's interesting because Larry June's perspective is different than a lot of other rappers that attack luxury rap, for example. So like, I've talked about this before in Palisades, California, him talking about, going to Saks Fifth and buying $1,000 candles. It's just him talking about all the types of different supplements he takes in the mornings and, talking about him going on jogs, like just leading this beautiful, stress-free sort of healthy lifestyle for his life, especially after everything maybe he's gone through in his past. It's a beautiful evolution when it comes down to his writing, and I've been a fan of this album the entire year. That's going to be my number 6 selection.
Yeah, that was hard to leave off the list, man. I love songs in there like 89 Earthquake, Palisades, CA, like just so many incredible tracks. So tough to leave off, but
top 5. All right, so let's go into the
is.
top 5. So my number 5 selection is going to be Michael by Killer Mike. That's where
there
I have
you go. I have Hotel 1105 by D2X. Cracked
there
my top
we go.
five.
It
yeah.
cracked your top 5 albums of the year. Incredible. Shout out to D2X. He had another fantastic year. But let me talk about Michael by Killer Mike. I mean, again, you did it justice because you spoke about it at the beginning of your list. I think that when you have to look at Southern rap and like the pure essence of Southern rap, this is one of the best albums to come out of the South, especially for this decade. I was super impressed by the production all the way throughout. And it was also interesting to see Killer Mike take in, old collaborators of his, but also bring in, a bunch of new faces to the table from Atlanta, whether it be, let's say, like a JID or a Black, for example. Even looking at, let's say, Young Thug and Future making this track list, having Andre 3K make the track list. Like, there's so many, even CeeLo Green on the intro. It was just like, it was such a mixed bag, let's say, for the features and like the generations coming in, but it was so nice to see everything kind of blush in together. And like you said, it's kind of like Killer Mike going back into his life and giving you all the tales and, all of the sort of lessons he learned out throughout it and giving you a positive perspective about it. There's also certain songs where, he's talking about, just the term trap music and like what it means to him and how he's kind of past that now and how like he's a landlord and how he's built up like, all of his millions throughout real estate. It's such an interesting perspective to get from an OG in the game. And like you said, when it comes down to Killer Mike, yes, I feel like he has been celebrated for his work with Run the Jewels, and it's always an album of the year contentions, but this year I really do feel like for a solo album, he got his flowers for it, and some of the best songs of the year, like Scientists and Engineers, which, that's one of the best songs of the year.
Absolutely.
So, all right, that's my number 5 selection.
So number 5 for me, Hotel 1105 by D2X, and we've been championing D2X's music for the longest time. One of the best emerging artists out of Chicago and in hip-hop as a whole, I feel like right now. And I think that what makes him stand out is his soulfulness as an MC as well as
the hunger.
Yeah,
the
that
hunger's
and
on a different
the
level,
incredible beat selection. This guy has an amazing ear for music, and I feel like this album is an extension of D2X's real-life manifestations. Him living without a care in the world in this luxurious hotel with his family and him working towards earning that permanent vacation. I feel like it's sort of like Call Me If You Get Lost in a sense where you're getting those vacation vibes with this album. And we've seen this approach before from rappers looking at J. Cole's The Warm-Up or looking at Kanye West's The College Dropout where you're getting that come-up story, which is also so exciting for hip-hop fans to follow along with and to be with the artist at those early points. And although it's similar to those projects in terms of maybe soundscape and purpose, but he has his own original style of telling his stories. And I feel like he checks every box to make a quality album. You have a concise listen, only coming in at 10 songs. You have a consistent vibe with the luscious and, very easygoing, jazzy soundscapes that give him sort of room to breathe. And a lot of good poignant themes of like embracing faith, self-awareness, advocating against gun violence. And there's just so many standout tracks on here. Looking at a song like Faith, which is an absolute anthem for hip-hop soul music. Looking at a song, for example, like I Am Here, where he's reflecting on like losing his 16-year-old cousin and being devastated by all the senseless killings around him. And what's amazing is that all of that pain is sort of being massaged by this myriad of jazz bliss, bro, of these trumpets and music that you feel like you would hear off of a John Coltrane or a Miles Davis album, which I believe he actually samples from within these track lists. And I love the fact that all throughout this track list, he keeps you entertained without cursing, just with his passion and hunger and his amazing rhymes. Also love, again, other creative sample choices like him sampling Toto, the pop rock band, on the song Waves and Moonlights, just because it's not a typical sort of, sample for a hip hop artist to choose. And yeah, as I said, it's just one of the best soulful rap albums that I heard in a long time. And
I believe
think
it's also a lot of in-house production as well from D2X's team. Like a lot of it is especially curated for him and what he wants to do with his album experiences.
But yeah, great storytelling, great writing. Everything about this album is spectacular. Was it an honorable mention for you?
Yeah, it would be an honorable mention for me. But I do have albums in front of it,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest with you. But D2X is a great friend of the podcast as
Absolutely.
well. Someone that supported us for a very long time. So thank you. Thank you for all that you do for us, bro. And, well, your album made Lose List. So
Yes, sir.
Congratulations. But let's continue going on
Top
with this.
four.
Top
Here we
four,
go.
right.
Number 4 for me is Quaranta by Danny Brown.
All right. I'm going to get to that very soon. But number 4 is The Patience by Mick
There it
Jenkins
is.
for me. So, yeah, I think The Patience is one of the best albums of the year. And one of my favorite live album reactions of the year, too. I remember being in that live album reaction, and I was just so captivated by the listen after first listen, because I'm like, this is one of the best Mick Jenkins albums that have come out in a long time. And
We were having a conversation. You
yesterday.
said Since the Waters.
Yes, absolutely. It's Since the Waters. And I feel like this is Mick Jenkins in top form, right? Because you've had certain projects in the past, like let's say Waves or like Elephant in the Room, and you feel like, yeah, like these are quality projects, but is he really putting his foot on the gas? Is this really like top tier Mick Jenkins? And like you said, this is a completely different approach and album for him, because this is him really attacking this by himself. And as you said, he had a record label situation, so it was kind of like a breath of fresh air, and he's coming at everyone for this. Like, this is really like Mick Jenkins in like the Mick Jenkins mode that, you and I loved for so long after The Waters. Even looking at, let's say, the aggressive tone and matter off of something like Show and Tell, even something like, let's say, 007, which what I think is one of the best songs of the entire year. Looking, for example, Farm to Table with Vic Mensa. You have these incredible features all the way throughout too. Like, you have a 10-song album, and the 4 features you get are Freddie Gibbs, Benny the Butcher, JID, and Vic Mensa. Dream come true for me as a hip hop fan. So being able to see that and being able to see him go into a mode that I've never seen him before, it was absolutely incredible. Even like the personal writing on something like verse 1 on Mop, you're not finding that in hip hop in 2023. So I had to include it at number 4 on my list.
Yeah, amazing album. Fucking amazing. Definitely deserves more love. But yeah, I have Quaranta by Danny Brown, which I'm assuming you have at number 3.
I have it at number 3.
So you could join on this conversation. Yeah, when it comes to Danny Brown with Quaranta, this is sort of like the spiritual successor to 30, aka XXX, which was a staple in Danny's catalog, considered a classic by many, and it was cool to see him like follow up. It's sort of like an update in Danny Brown's life after so many years, and this definitely feels like an artistic progression from Danny Brown.
Oh, is it ever?
Just because instead of getting like the zany, frantic, manic Danny Brown that you're used to
You
getting,
still find it sometimes.
you still find it, but like you're getting more of this grounded and mellow side of him, allowing him to sort of be more meditative and write these compelling songs. Like, for example, on the opening track where he's rapping about this complex subject where it's like hip hop ruined but also saved my life because it fulfilled my passion, but it also made me lose relationships because I engulfed myself into the craft so much. So getting those types of perspectives and that sort of reflection from Danny Brown is incredible. But then you also have cool songs like Tanter, produced by The Alchemist, where you're getting those funny one-liners. Like, for example, got a Mexican homie named Chinese Mike. You're getting volatile energy that's infectious. You're getting the bouncing off the walls type of performance from Danny Brown, where he's sort of rapping over this really crazy Alchemist beat that's so experimental. And yeah, I loved seeing the duality of Danny Brown on this project and seeing him really just grow as an artist. This felt like, I know it was recorded while he was not sober yet. You could see that he's making the steps to want to make a journey for his road to recovery throughout this album. I love songs like, I think it was Jen's Terrific Vacation, rapping about like gentrification. That was really dope. Even a song like YBP, him rapping about his upbringing in Detroit and how rough that was. You're just getting some of the best Danny Brown tracks of the last decade or so, in my opinion, all across this track list. So
that's facts.
Had to be my number 4.
All right, let's go on to number 3. So it comes at no surprise. At number 3, I have Quaranta by Danny Brown. Top 3, probably Generational Curse. Right?
Generational Curse by Ice Cold Bishop. Because
All right.
I think The one thing we knew before going into this episode is what both our 1 or 2 were gonna be.
Yeah, but I kind of expected Ice Cold Bishop's album to be really high up
Yeah.
on your list based on our previous conversations. But yeah, number 3, Quaranta, just to even piggyback off of what you were saying, there's a really cool approach and sequencing on the album where you'll get one song where Danny's a lot more brash and in that classic atrocity exhibition sort of cadence that people absolutely love. And then it goes back to maybe a bit more toned down and more meditative Danny Brown that you don't necessarily get too much of within his discography, so it's always really nice. And I love song concepts on here, like Jen's terrific Vacation, where he's like, I'm looking out my window now, and there's like a Starbucks in the corner, and like that used to be a crack house, you know. And I always felt like it was just kind of like, you know,
Painting the picture.
Yeah, painting the picture, and like the imagery throughout the album is so gripping, and it's always really nice to go through. Even like something, for example, like Down With It, where Danny Brown is just getting super personal, and you know, he's talking about like just what he wants to do in his personal life. And I just love to see that from Danny Brown, because like you said, this is the successor to 30, which people absolutely adored, and you know, many people consider like to be his classic album right next to Atrocity. And this was a perfect follow-up. When we're going to look back on 2023, this is going to be one of the best albums of the year. And you know what, Danny Brown has 2 albums in my top 3 this year.
Danny Brown has had a fucking hell of a year. Yeah, the fact that he has 2 top 10 albums of the year for 2023, not many people could say that. But yeah, number 3, Generational Curse by Ice Cold Bishop, an album that I got the chance to listen to very early on. And when I first listened to it, I'm like, fuck, man. The West Coast is alive again. Like, this is the refreshing sound I wanted to hear from a West Coast rapper, and being able to hear artists like an Ice Cold Bishop, artists like Coast Contra, which are an amazing hip-hop group coming out of the West Coast as well. It sort of reinstored a lot of hope for me going forward for the West Coast movement, especially when it comes to, you know, more traditional hip-hop, more lyrical-based stuff. But yeah, Ice Cold Bishop is not your typical gangster rapper, just because when it comes to what he spills into the microphone, he's almost like a ventriloquist, because he can tap into so many different vocal cadences, so many different voices, to the point where you're listening to a song and you're like, is there an uncredited feature here? Like, what's going on? So super dynamic and animated performances all throughout this album. I also love the fact that he's making you feel how scary it was to live in his neighborhood, because this album has the sonic makeup of a horror movie score. You have these sinister strings ringing all throughout, really nocturnal instrumentals. His panicked vocal inflections also add a lot to that feeling. And it's an album that makes you feel paranoid and claustrophobic, the way that he probably felt, being anxious around these dangerous situations, like when he goes into a house party that got shot up, on a song like Focused and Last Night, which both take you through that whole story. Apart from that, you have an amazing middle ground of like him giving you these realistic lyrics while also delivering them in a super intense way on a song like There. He's rapping about governmental corruption. He's rapping about witnessing his cousin's veins missing because she's injecting herself with heroin. Like,
It's
really
crazy, yeah.
gritty, brutal, realistic performance all throughout. Great concept album. And also, I don't know if you noticed, but the album sequencing,
Yeah, it's crazy.
incredible. The songs bleeding into each other. This made a statement that Ice Cold Bishop is one of the most exciting voices in hip-hop, and that he has a knack for crafting a great concept album. Guys, please do yourselves a favor and check this one out.
Yeah,
amazing
incredible album. But okay, number 2 for me is gonna be, I think
for ourselves at least, once we reveal our number 2s, we're revealing our number 1s, because it
it's
comes
gonna
down
be
to
the,
those
it's gonna be
two.
the 1 and 2. So
Yeah.
what do you want to do? Do you want to do, okay, so should we do maybe a general conversation off of each album and then reveal the 2 and 1 together?
You know what? Let's reveal a 2 and 1, then have a general conversation about both. Let's do that.
Okay,
So,
you want to do that?
yeah, number 2.
Number 2, I have Scaring the Hose by Danny Brown and JPEG
Wow,
Mafia.
okay. Number 2, I have Utopia by Travis Scott.
And then after that, at number 1, I have Utopia by Travis Scott.
And I have Scaring the Hose by JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown. The first thing I want to talk about is what made you edge Utopia above Scaring the Hose?
So what I really looked at was just like, it was a fucking toss-up.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. It was a toss-up. Like, it was really like, I was looking back at the beginning of the year, and I knew automatically that these 2 were going to really make it for, you know, what I had to come with it. I just think that, like, Yes, you could argue that you get better performances from maybe JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown, and you get a bit more of a concise track list throughout Scaring the Hose. But I think that, the replay value of Utopia won me over in a lot of different scenarios. I have some of my most played songs of the year, like example, like a Thank God, My Eyes, going on to something like Schizo. I feel like you get some of the most unique and well-balanced productions of the year from some of the most star-studded producers of the year, like a Boy Wonder, like a Coleman, for example, on songs like a Schizo. You get some of the biggest moments of the year, like a Meltdown. So I think that it was like also the Travis Scott fandom coming into me and like being like, well, fuck,
Yeah.
this was 2023.
This was the defining moment.
This was the defining moment of 2023 for me. So I guess that maybe, any other day I might look back at this list and I'm like, okay, it could be changed between 1 and 2. Maybe one day I'll look back at this list and I'll be like, I made a mistake. But for the most part, I do feel like, you're also getting incredible performances from Travis Scott throughout the entire album.
I will say this, though. The reason why I put Scaring the Hose above Utopia to sort of butt into this conversation is the fact that Utopia, for myself at least, and I feel like you agree, it has skips. Whereas Scaring the Hose has a perfect track list from top to bottom where there isn't any misses whatsoever. But looking at a Utopia, yes, Travis proved that he's a master curator once again and gave you these immersive soundscapes, but something like a K-pop really didn't belong in that track list. Looking at a song like Topia Twins, I feel like that was one of the weaker tracks in Travis's canon as a whole. And that was the main reason.
I could see what you're saying about that. But example, like, I'm not comparing this to MBDTF, but there's certain songs at MBDTF that I think that, like, if they were cut off the track list, like, it would have enhanced it a bit better. But
would they be misses, though?
It depends what you look at as a miss or like what you look at as a skip. I don't know.
Okay.
It was the sort of situation where I'm like, the track list is so fucking strong that I could look over a K-pop and I could look over a Topia Twins and I don't mind doing it. Not only that, but like, you're getting so many fucking bangers on this album.
Yeah, so let's talk about Utopia for now.
Okay, so like just top tier rapping performances by Travis all the way throughout, and you're getting super personal songs and writing as well. For example, something like My Eyes, where he's attacking two different perspectives with a different beat switch and coming out with a different type of flow. Even looking at examples, something like I don't know where you want to go with this. Maybe something like a Schizo, for example, where he starts off the track and there's so many different changes, and even that last beat switch, like I feel like
it's like four beat switches in that shit. It's crazy.
I think it is the best produced album of the year.
I think it's the most expensive sounding album of the year, and that was really cool because when you're getting a big blockbuster rap album like Utopia, you want flying colors to come off as a result because you know that there's an A-list cast of people working on this. You have high budgets to put this together. And after a 5-year wait, he fucking delivered, bro. And
that was another thing, is that like this album had a lot of pressure to be able to live up to the hype of 2023. And we were also having the conversation. Imagine this album didn't drop this year. Imagine how empty you would feel without this album. And that's what I was thinking about. I'm like, there's a sort of like intangible factor to the album.
Yeah.
Like it created that magic of 2023. And I'm like, well, that's what an album is supposed to do, and that's what music does. Sometimes you can't even put it into words, and you can't even explain it, but there's that sort of like magic factor with it. So yeah, like maybe I could say that Scaring the Hose has a better track record when you go from track to track, and maybe you do get better rapping performances out of Danny Brown, but for the most part, like, I feel like there's maybe a bit more to that than an album experience.
There is, and Scaring the Hose offers that. It's the most innovative listening experience of the year for me. The fact that JPEG Mafia was able to sort of do a collage of samples to form these beats that he made off of one sampling machine and be able to incorporate mainstream songs like Kellis's Milkshake on something like Fentanyl Tester and make it sound as bizarre and eccentric as they made it sound is just a breath of fresh air for the hip-hop scene. Like, in a space where we're getting so much of the same within the landscape, you got the zaniest, most unique left field production that they sort of made fun for me. You know what I mean? Like, that was my takeaway, is that it's the most fun I had listening to an album all year long. Okay, let me ask
you this then. Okay, so for your case, like, I went through your Spotify Wrapped and it was all Utopia. So
it was.
So would you say replay value has like the least merit in these types of conversations for you, for the best?
No, it has merit, and I had Lean Beef Patty and I had Perfect pretty high in my Wrapped as well.
But to have like top 5 of your songs, the entire Wrapped, to have all Utopia.
I played more Utopia than Scaring the Hose, but that's not gonna make me edge it above the other.
Okay, no, that was that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
I figured, like, because it had such a dominance for you this year in your listenership,
yeah, it did.
That maybe you would probably go at number 1. But
you know why? Because it has something for everybody, bro. If you want like a melodic jam. You have something like I Know. If you want a mosh pit inducing banger, you got Fiend
Yeah,
in
but
there.
I think it even goes just beyond, like, let's say the expensive soundscape or being able to play on so many different fields. You also get some of the most unique productions of the year. Example, something like Parasail.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like even like the production on Lost Forever and the beat switch with the Alchemist. Like it really is like a well put together concept album of like Travis Scott painting you a dystopia within a utopia. You know, and that's what I love about it, is that there's this underlying message throughout it. And as I said before, it was one of the biggest topics of conversation. But Scaring the Host, for myself, I knew when this dropped, it was going to be a top 5 lock. And then again, it's a top 3 lock. And like,
I knew it when it got announced. When it got announced, Danny Brown and
Yeah,
JPEG were
no,
making
stupid.
a collab album. You already know it was over.
and you could go through JPEG's old albums, like A Veteran, for example, or even an LP, and it's not going to sound like this. It's a completely different album when it comes to like approach and attack from JPEG Mafia. And the work that he did on this album, man, just salute to him. Just an incredible artist all the way throughout. You know, the way that he's able to attack soundscapes and the way he blends it in with his own raps, like he really does this album justice. And you know, even songs like Perfect or even Kingdom Heart Keys, like what are we doing here? You know, some of the best records of the entire year. So
Yeah, and I love the concept of the album too, because maybe not everyone realizes this, but it's clever but also silly, because it's a big satire is what it is. It's a satire for hip hop culture and mainstream audiences. It's a satire of so many things, such as also their, you know, satire of the church, satire of a bunch of different
yeah, like
topics.
God
where
loves you, Jack Harlow combo meal.
That's
This
what
is
I'm saying.
Heaven on earth.
It's them poking fun at all of these cultural melting points, and you're just left laughing, but also being amazed at the fact that on a song like Scaring the Hose, the title track, they're literally able to make a beat that sounds like someone clapping cheeks sound so good because of their rhymes.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no, there's a comedic
Honestly
value to
speaking,
it. There's a
comedic value
big
to
comedic
it.
value to it.
There's bars on here. There's energetic performances like Perfect. There's great collaborations with Red Veil on Kingdom Hearts Key. There's everything that I would have wanted out of an album that is as innovative and as experimental as a Scaring the Hose. And it's genius
the
from
album
top
art is
to
so
bottom.
fire. I don't give a fuck.
Is,
The
it
album art
is.
is incredible. So, listen, guys, that's going to conclude our top 10 list. Thank you so much for a wonderful year. It's been a slower year, but you know what? Nonetheless, we always get quality music, and you better believe the podcast is going to be speaking about quality music. So, with that being said, where did Lou and I get it right? Where did we get it wrong? And what do you guys want to see next from NFR Podcast? Let me know in the comments section. And as I said at the beginning of this episode, mark it in your calendars, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a massive night on December 28th. NFR's very own award show, and it's going to be an incredible night. So much love to everyone. Thank you for watching this video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.